Joe Biden, in one of his many fantastic speeches this week, had this to say about so-called climate deniers. Who denies that we have a climate?
I quite frankly think it's not only outrageous, it's really stupid. Everyone who willfully denies the impacts of climate change is condemning the American people to a dangerous future, and either is really, really dumb or has some other motive than that. How can you deny there's climate change, for God's sake?
The man who can't think says you're a moron. For more on this, I want to bring in Steve Milloy. He's a senior E&E Institute Legal Fellow and a former Trump EPA Team Member as well. Steve, great to have you back with us.
Hey, Vince, thanks for having me. Do I want to be part of this segment?
I hope so. I hope so, because we've booked you for it, so you've got to deliver, Steve. Hey, by the way, happy Independence Day, man.
Yes, happy 4th to you. Thanks.
All right, so President Biden says you're a moron if you don't think that man has caused the current weather we're experiencing, and if you don't think that the government should have more power to change it.
Right. So the occasion for that comment was Hurricane Beryl, which is going through the Caribbean. It's about to strike Mexico. So you're stupid or dumb or whatever if you don't think climate change has caused a hurricane in hurricane season. Imagine that. A hurricane in hurricane season, and that is climate change. He doesn't know what he's talking about. His own National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, on their own website, they say that there's no aspect of hurricanes that is outside the realm of natural variability, and that is entirely true. Hurricanes have nothing to do with emissions, warming, climate change, whatever that is, or anything. It's a natural occurrence. This year has been forecast to be a very heavy hurricane season because we're transitioning from this El Nino to La Nina cycle. Plus, interestingly enough, we've had warmer ocean waters because there's more sunlight, not because there's more emissions. So this has got nothing to do with global warming or emissions or anything like that. It's just, Joe Biden spouting off about stuff he knows nothing.
Hasn't there been a positive trend as it relates to hurricanes not hitting us either quite as frequently or quite as hard?
Well, for 10 years after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, there were actually no landfalling hurricanes. That's quite a stretch. And, of course, the whole time we were hearing about how global warming is making hurricanes worse, and, of course, that was not true. The last few years we've had hurricane activity. This year is supposed to be heavier because of the meteorological conditions, not because there's more emissions. Emissions have, the bottom line is emissions have nothing to do with anything. There's not a single type of extreme weather event that in any way correlates with emissions. And if emissions aren't responsible, then this whole climate debate is just for nothing because what's there, Vince, about a month ago, there was this study that came out in Nature magazine, which is a pretty prestigious journal, and it reported that cleaner air, because of regulations, is allowing more sunlight to hit the Earth's surface, and that's causing the ocean warming right now that is playing a role with hurricane season. And just generally, the warming spike of the past year, this study said 80% was caused by cleaner air allowing more sunlight to hit the surface of the Earth.
Really?
Okay.
So as we clean up the air, we're making things worse.
Yeah. And so very, very few major media outlets have reported this. Reuters and a paper in the UK. No American outlets, because they don't want you to know about it. It's the sun. It's the big yellow ball in the sky. Of course, everybody knows this. You're standing under the sun, then a cloud goes by and it's cooler.
Yes. Well, well, this is why they now want to like spray chemicals into the air to reflect the sun. So the theory is like, okay, so we've made the air cleaner. There's too much sunlight coming down, so therefore we have to put more pollution into the air to stop the sunlight.
Right. They debunk their own scam with their geoengineering. These guys, Rich Bill Gates, and I think the U.S. government too, wants to shoot air pollution into the air to blot out the sun. Now, what could go wrong with that?
It's all so crazy. I mean, It's just amazing. Honestly, it's just amazing that anybody treats any of this seriously. But they do. It involves a lot of money, and people's lives are on the line. You talk about the hurricanes and when they hit, and it's been good. It's been better that the frequency has declined over the last decade, as you pointed out, but of landfall hurricanes. But at the same time, what the position the left advocates for here is, well, we'd like to make you less resilient when those hurricanes do hit. We'd like to shut off your ability to have, say, a generator in order to power up your home during that time frame. Your internal combustion engine needs to go away. You need to be entirely reliant on electricity that you are basically importing from somewhere else. And that grid, well, I'll tell you what, is not going to stand up to all of the new green technology that they are trying to force down our throats. This is imperiling people's lives.
Oh, absolutely. So, Joe Biden is overseeing the destruction of our electricity grid, replacing coal and gas and nuclear plants with wind and solar, which are unreliable, more expensive, and crap out when you need them most, like when it's really cold or when it's really hot. People ought to remember the experience of Texas in February 2021. It was really cold, the windmills froze, and hundreds of people died because the grid almost collapsed. And during this summer, in Texas and California and the Midwest, the grid is in danger. If we get really hot weather, the grid could collapse. But what's going to happen? People die in heat waves. Fewer people have been dying since we've had air conditioning. But of course, the Biden administration wants to get rid of air conditioning too. They're doing everything they can to make it more expensive and harder to get. This climate agenda it's societal suicide.
Yeah. On that issue of air conditioning, I know you're writing this week about this subject for the Washington Times. I wasn't even aware of this until your column came out. That the Olympians who are going to Paris, at least a huge number of them, won't be allowed to have air conditioning during the Summer Olympics. What's happening here?
Well, so the Paris Olympic organizers, they want to have Green Olympics. And so Green Olympics means you can't have air conditioning in the dorms. So none of the athletic dorms have air conditioning. Well, of course, rich countries, that's stupid because it could be really hot in Paris. And so rich countries like the United States and the other European countries and Japan, they're bringing their own portable air conditioner units for the athletic dorms. But guess what? The poor countries, like the African countries, they can't afford portable air conditioners. The Ugandan president of the Olympic Committee said we can't afford this. And of course, it's like air conditioning apartheid, right?
Yes. So the wealthy countries. So if I understand it correctly, because I'm looking, the wealthy countries are typically the ones who push for the climate agenda the hardest.
Yeah.
So here you have all the wealthy countries who are like, no air conditioning for anybody except for us. We get an exception because we're wealthy.
Yeah. Well, the poor countries can't. It's not like poor countries couldn't bring air conditioning. They just can't afford it. Right. So we're going to have a situation where only developed country athletes are cool, and the poor country athletes are, they're schwitzing.
Right. But isn't this, Steve Milloy, isn't this kind of like a perfect little analogy for the way the entire climate agenda operates? So the United States and on these big European countries, these wealthy countries, they all get to pretend like they're holier than thou. They have these big agendas that are enriching their own billionaires to untold sums. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka goes into utter chaos living under the tyranny of this system.
Yeah. Medal counts are most important, more important than the environment. Look, the Paris Olympics could be as green as they want. There's no possible way anything they could do could affect the environment. Even if you believe in the climate hoax, there's just no way. But they go through these motions anyway. And by the way, they're going to hold these their swimming events in the Seine, which has got unsafe levels of E. coli. Why don't instead of sweating all the other green crap, why don't they clean up the Seine so that they can have a safe event and just have a clean river?
Well, yeah. I thought that was the whole point of the so-called environmental movement is to have clean water and air.
Yeah, and so that's really the point of my op-ed in the Washington Times. That we spend all this money, wind, solar, EVs. It's not doing anything for the weather. Meanwhile, actual environmental needs are going by the wayside. All our rivers around the world are routinely polluted anytime it rains heavily or stormwater systems fail, wastewater systems fail. We don't fix those, but we're building windmills which can't possibly make a difference.
Right. And it's entirely reasonable to be concerned about the quality of water. In fact, it's essential for civilization. And the left, to the extent that they care about that issue at all, it seems that they've almost entirely abandoned it. I mean, now it's entirely about like how much carbon dioxide is coming out of your business or out of your cow.
Right. Well, our environment is so clean that we're now worried about colorless, odorless emissions of carbon dioxide, which, by the way, is plant food and necessary for life on Earth.
Right.
So now that they're going after plant food and life on Earth, you got to wonder what the real agenda is.
Yeah. As you know, when you say that you've been on this issue for so long, every time you see something like this, do you become more and more cynical about like what the hidden agendas are here?
Well, I know what the agenda is. I dialed into this a long time ago because I have been doing it for 34 years. I mean, you made a good point. Over the last 3 decades, the environmentalists used to be worried about a lot of stuff. Now they're only worried about climate because it's not about the environment. It's about the political power they get from the climate issue. Okay, by red taping us and all these regulations and making us poor, they just gain political control over us, which is what they want, and that's the whole deal.
Biden, in his own slurring way this week, said that there's a tremendous psychological effect that comes from being sad about the climate. Take a listen to this. This is Biden earlier this week.
Look, extreme weather events drive home a point that I've been saying for so long. Ignoring climate change is deadly and dangerous and irresponsible. These climate-fueled extreme weather events don't just affect people's lives, they also cost money, they hurt the economy, and they have a significant negative psychological effect on people. The psychological impact of climate change is immense. So much so that I think it was AOC at one point had said, how could people even have children? I know that lefties broadly have suggested this. How could people have children in a world like this? The climate is destroying us, and the humans are destroying the climate, Steve Milloy.
Yeah. So, the ironic thing here is that they've been scaring bejeebers at everybody, especially children. So the Washington Post has these articles, New York Times all the time, about how children need psychiatric help because of climate. And these kids, their minds are being destroyed by all this stuff. It's all nonsense, but their minds are being destroyed. It's very sad.
It is sad. And they're being groomed by the left, and they're left destroyed by it, quite unfortunately. Steve Milloy, really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Again,
Happy Independence Day, and have a good weekend. That's Steve Milloy.